Hi everybody, I'm Mike McCrory and this is Would You Make It? In this video, I'm going to make a box with a secret compartment out of cherry that is a gift for a cadet graduating from the Virginia Military Institute, or VMI as it is commonly known. So let's get started. I'm going to start by cutting up this 5/4 cherry. I'm going to carefully cut this single piece to have the grain wrap around the box. This piece is a little more than 10 inches wide, so it will not fit onto my 8-inch jointer. So I'm going to use this planer sled. It's basically a flat piece of MDF with a fence at the front, and then I will shim it to be stable. That will give me a flat top, and then I can flip it over and plane the other side to make it parallel. Now I'll joint one edge and then run it through my table saw to cut it to the desired width, which will be the height of the box. I'm going to use every piece, so I'll save those cutoffs for later. Now I'm marking the ends to make sure the grain is flowing correctly. That way I can keep track of where I need to cut. This material is thicker than I need, so I'm going to resaw it to give me enough material to make the bottom of the box and the bottoms of a couple of trays that will fit inside the box. I'll use these smaller cutoffs to make the sides of the trays and some compartments in one of the trays. Now I'll sand the sides of the box to the same thickness. I'm also sanding this piece of ash to the exact same thickness as the cherry so that I can use it for test cuts when I set up the box joint jig. From each piece of cherry, I'll cut one long side and one short side, and I'm labeling them to know how to assemble them with the continuous grain. Before using the box joint jig, I'm marking the top edge to know that it's the top and to also know which way it should face. Now I'm going to use a couple of small pieces of the ash to set up the box joint jig. First, I'll get the blade height to be just a tiny bit higher than the thickness of the wood. I've already done some preliminary setup to get the spacing correct, but I want to test a full cut to make sure the pieces are not too loose and not too tight. I will leave the blade guard off for the test cut so you can see what I'm doing with the I-Box jig as I make the cuts. Now I'll flip the piece around and place it over the pin plates to set the starting position of the other piece, and then I'll make all the cuts. It fit together surprisingly well, so I'm not going to make any adjustments. Now with the blade guard in place, I will make all the cuts on the cherry box sides. It comes together nicely. It's a pretty snug fit, so hopefully that won't cause problems when I glue it up. With a 1/4-inch plywood router bit, I'll cut a groove along the bottom for the cherry bottom to fit into. I'm not using plywood for the bottom, but I've sanded the cherry bottom down to a similar thickness so that it fits into this groove. I can run the long pieces all the way through, but I have to stop short of the ends on the short pieces so that the groove is not exposed. I'll cut the cherry bottom to fit and then glue it up. I put only a dot of glue in the groove in the middle of the short sides to allow for the bottom to expand and contract. I think the box is a little too high, so I will cut it later on the table saw to get better proportions. Now I'll use an Ogee router bit to put an edge detail around the top of the box. I'm going to put the VMI logo on the top using multiple coats of epoxy. So I'll start by wiping on some shellac to help minimize any bleeding of the color into the wood fibers. And now the CNC will carve the logo. I start with a 15-degree bit, and then I use an 1/8-inch end mill to clear out all the rest. I'm doing one color at a time, and it's a 5-color logo, so this is a multi-day process. I'm using TotalBoat epoxy, and the first color will be red. I'm using mica powder for each color. After pouring on the epoxy, I use a heat gun to release any air bubbles. The final part of the logo is the gold ring that goes around the outside. After all of the colors have fully cured, I'll run it through the drum sander with 100 grit sandpaper, and then I finished it up with 220 grit. There were a couple of box joints that were not fully closed. My only explanation for why that happened is that the bottom piece was a little too long and it prevented it from closing up tightly. You might be tempted to fill that with glue and sawdust, but it's better to wedge in a piece of wood. After the glue has cured, I'll cut those off and then sand everything. Next, I will work on preparing the wood for the false bottom that will create a secret compartment, and the bottom of the tray that will sit above that. I'm just testing the fit before I cut it to length. Now I'll reduce the height of the box by cutting off approximately an inch on the table saw. And I'll find a use for that cutoff piece too, so nothing is going to waste. For the false bottom, I'm going to insert some rare earth magnets, so I'm drilling the holes for those with a 12mm Forstner bit. And then I'll set them in place using Starbond CA glue. And then I'll do a quick test from the other side to make sure the magnets can attract through the wood. Now with a 1/2 inch round over bit, I will round over the corners of the box. Now I will cut these thin pieces. They will be used to support the false bottom and to fit around the outside of the tray. The false bottom has a nice piston fit, and then I can lift it out using magnets. I will glue on edges around the top of the false bottom so that they can hold up the tray that will sit above this. Next, I will work on the side pieces that fit around the tray. This one will be a little different because it's going to have a rabbet that will fit over the outside edge of the bottom. And I'm also going to cut some dados to create some compartments inside the tray. These thinner pieces will be used for the compartments. They're exactly 1/8 of an inch thick to be the same as the blade curve. That makes it really easy to cut the dados. Now I'll glue up the tray and let it sit overnight. The next day, I'll run it through the drum sander to clean up the joints, and then I can glue in the 1/8 inch pieces to create the compartments. Now I'm going to take that offcut and create a couple of pieces with magnets that will be used to lift up the secret compartment. I drilled holes deep enough to hold 3 magnets so that there would be enough of an attractive force. I'll glue the magnets in place, and then I'll glue another piece of cherry on top to double up the thickness so that I can create a finger hole. And now I'll drill the finger hole. I don't remember what size of a bit I used, but I guess it's likely 7/8 of an inch. With my bandsaw, I'll cut a rounded shape along the top, and then I will clean up the shape on the belt sander. And then I'll round over all the edges with a 1/16 inch round over just to take off the sharp corners. It works, but the fit is pretty tight and it doesn't fall down smoothly. So I will put a 45-degree chamfer along the bottom to help it slide in more easily. And I'll also put a chamfer along the bottom of the box to make it easy to pick up. Now it's time to cut the mortises for the hinges. I'm using Brusso JB103 hinges. They make templates to route out the mortises for the hinges, but I'm just going to do it by hand. I marked the edges with a knife, and then I used a chisel to deepen those marks and extend them all the way to the corners. Then I used a router with an 1/8 inch bit with a depth set to the thickness of the hinge to clear away most of the material. Then I used a chisel to clean it all up and square up the corners. And then, with the top supported to be at the same height as the top of the box, I'll mark the positions of the hinges. It's easier to mark them this way than it is to measure and potentially introduce measurement error. And then I will follow the same process to cut those two mortises. I'm not going to install the hinges yet because I want to spray on the finish first. I started with a coat of shellac to give the cherry a bit of an amber hue, and then I sprayed on a couple of coats of lacquer. The cherry will darken over time, but the shellac will give a warm tone to start off with. Now I will install the hinges. Brass screws are pretty soft and can easily snap off, so I take extra precautions by using a gimlet to pre-thread the hole, and then I apply a bit of paste wax to reduce the friction. My client in this case is my neighbor's sister. They had adopted a cadet from VMI through their church back in 2021. In their first year at VMI, cadets are known as rats. They progress through the mental and physical demands until February or March of that first school year, when they go through a grueling workout known as the breakout, when they break out from the rat line and become fourth classmen, and progress toward becoming first classmen at the time of graduation. The last thing I need to do is to install a plaque with the cadet's name and year of graduation. This cadet graduated as a first-classman on May 17, 2025, and was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army Infantry. And that's it. The tray and false bottom slide in pretty easily. I was careful not to make the fit so tight that it would get stuck on the way down. So I gotta ask, would you make it?